Hi, everyone. My name is Savannah. This is the January 2022 Hack the Box Meetup, and we also have Chase with us and Garrett Foster. Chase, do you want to go ahead and kind of give Garrett an intro?
Um, this is Garrett. He's going to be going over the box BLACKFIELD. Garrett, would you like to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah, appreciate it. Everyone, I'm Garrett. I'm a coworker of Savannah's over at Optiv. Recently started there about less than half a year ago. Um, been doing this kind of thing in the last 2 years, and pretty excited to be here. This is gonna be fun.
Very cool. Without further ado, I guess we'll get right into the box.
So I'm going to put up how to connect to the lab. So as long as you entered in your username on the form on Meetup, then you should be added to the server. So I'm going to give everyone like 5 to 10 minutes to kind of get connected in. And then we'll be back at around between 12:05 to 12:10. If anyone has any issues, just ping us in the Discord. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to showing the connection screen so everyone can kind of get connected. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Garrett to kind of go ahead and get started. So like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ping us in the Discord, and we can definitely help. So I'm going to go ahead and share his screen. Oh, okay, and then I'm going to remove all this except for Garrett.
All right, sweet. Thanks, Savannah. All right, so BLACKFIELD's a ton of fun. I chose this one because it was the first hard box that I had done that I'd done on my own completely solo. It's the one that got me kind of addicted to Active Directory in general. So kick it off kind of just like with a basic IPsec nmap scan. For the sake of time, I copied him and I've already ran it. So I pulled that up in Sublime over here, and looking at the ports that are open, you've got a 53 for DNS, 88 for Kerberos, 135 for our RPC. So just looking at the ports that are open, you can kind of already get the idea that we're looking at a domain controller. When you see kind of DNS is open, you see Kerberos and LDAP being open. That's kind of a giveaway for you. You also find that you're going to get the domain name, which is helpful for us. So we know that the domain is blackfield.local. So we'll just make a note of that for the domain. And then everyone can see my text, right? It's legible, readable. Make sure it's big enough. So we got SMB, and then this is useful too, 5985. If you're not familiar with 5985, it's PowerShell remoting. So it's a method that we may be able to take advantage of later for remote access to the box, depending on privileges. The other useful tool that I like to use that was kind of got popular on Twitter recently was a mind map released by Orange Cyber Defense, and I've got that in my Notion, and it's available on their GitHub, and it kind of gives you just an idea of how you want to start with this. You can see it's pretty extensive and it's rather large. So, for the sake of, let's see. So we're starting off here. We don't have any credentials whatsoever. So what are some things that we can look at to begin with to try to get a foothold over the box itself? So we've already scanned the network. We've got the IP address. We know that we're dealing with blackfield.local. The other useful thing is that while fingerprinting WinRM was, we got the host name of the box. So we know it's DCO1, and then we can say host name is DCO1. So now that the fully qualified domain name of this box is going to be DCO1.blackfield.local. So when that happens, I like to update my host file and add that so that we can use domain name or Kerberos authentication later on if necessary. So let's throw the IP in there, which is 10.10.10.192, and then DCO1 local. So now if we ping DCO1, it should come back. Yeah, cool. So back to the mind map. What are some options we could do? We've got the IP. I'm not going to do a zone transfer just because it's not going to lead us anywhere. So let's look at list guest access on SMB share. You'll see here it's using several different tools too. Enum for Linux, kind of an older tool. It still works sometimes. I don't care for it too much. It errors out most of the time. SMB map is a favorite of mine, so I'm going to roll with that one. You'll see the first one is actually trying to do what's called a null bind by giving no username, no password whatsoever, just to see if it can access any file shares that are on that host. So let's roll with that one and see what we get out of it. We'll just copy it straight up from 10.10.10.192 and see if we can access any shares. So nothing with the null bind. Let's try guest or anonymous access and see if anything's available that way. Okay, cool. So looks like anonymous access is enabled on the host. Some pretty default stuff. Admin C is going to be the root file system. Forensic is not a default directory, but you can see we don't have access to it at all from here. IPC, net logon, profiles, that one is not a default, but we can actually read this one, so we'll probably take a look at that. And then sysvol. Let's see. Okay, so we've got file shares. Let's just copy this, so make note of it later. Just say, we'll name this file shares. Cool. And so let's keep digging. So we can enumerate LDAP. That might be useful. We might be able to do a null bind to LDAP and pull some more information like usernames, maybe groups. If we can do a null bind, that's a whole lot more enumeration, and it would be pretty interesting if we could find anything there. So let's roll with that and see scripts. LDAP. So the wildcard is going to do whatever scripts are available for anything related to LDAP. And then we're going to say and not brute because we don't want to brute force any usernames, lock anybody out. 10.192. Neighbor service not known. What did I do wrong? Oop, there. Cool. Helps to type right. Okay, so while that's running, what else do we have available? So finding a user list. Oh, that was quick, actually. Oh, this dedicated VPN is nice. Okay, so real quick, this is just like a basic LDAP bind. So it's like if you ran LDAP search, or not, yeah, LDAP search and just using the base naming context to kind of pull more information. If it were able to do a null bind, we would have had more data come back. We would have had usernames, probably some security groups, information like that. But it's still useful, and out of what we get from what we get out of this, like the server name, we're getting DC01 back again. We're finding out that it is indeed BLACKFIELD.local, so that just validates and verifies what we got previously. So, and you can see that here. So doesn't look like we get anything out of LDAP, so probably not. Usually keep going down that path. Let's see, what else do we have? Relay and poisoning. Relay would be fun, but we've only got the one box, so trying to coerce authentication or bounce it somewhere else just isn't going to happen because you can't relay and authenticate back to itself. So, and then we can see 0 logons here, but you can see that dangerous could break stuff. So for the time being, maybe towards the end, if there's still time available, we can take a look at 0 logon. But for now, we're going to pretend like it's not vulnerable and just move on with what we have, which was that that SMB share that we can access. That was the profiles. So let's see what we got there. So we'll do SMB clients and source ops. So what I'm doing here is with Python tools and mainly in Packet, I like to work out of virtual environments because dependencies break constantly. And like when I was taking my OSCP, one of my attempts I lost because I broke dependencies. So I will never do that again. Every Python tool I run into a virtual environment just for that reason. So let's see, do SMB client to get access to it. So it's BLACKFIELD. Let's pull up the help so we can see the exact syntax. So SMB clients from Packet. Packet's a pretty cool toolkit for various different Active Directory tools. If you're not familiar with the GitHub page is pretty extensive, and there's a lot of kind of examples and proof of concepts of how to use them. So with this one, the positional arguments, we're going to need a domain. We know it's BLACKFIELD. Username, we're just going to use guest or anonymous. We don't have a password, and then that's so the target. So we'll do SMB client, if I can type, BLACKFIELD, we'll do anonymous, and then at 10.10.10.192, no password. So let's through help so we can see what the commands are. We got various different stuff. Open login. We've already logged in. We're not doing Kerberos login. So shares is going to list out everything that's available. So shares, shares, cool, and profiles. And for that one, we'll do, it should just be use profiles and ls. Okay, so looks like several different directories with usernames, which is interesting. at first glance, what this looks like to me is it looks like they've got a kind of replication of their users' profiles from different workstations that would be in the domain. So say like someone signs on their computer, their default profile is going to have like desktop documents, pictures, things of that nature. So likely what they're doing in this environment is they're just copying all that data, like just a backup solution, and saving them on the domain controller, which probably isn't the best idea to have everyone's data on the domain controller. Probably want that on a file server, but that's an argument for later. So let's see if there's anything in some of these directories, and just so that's empty. Try another one. Oh, so we'll just do another empty one. So they're likely all empty, but what this is useful for is we've basically done, now we know the existence of some usernames in their domain. So we could take this down and rip out the usernames and try to validate some of these users and see if they do exist. So let's just grab this and we'll make a list out of it. Let's call this SMB users. So this is probably going to look ugly. I'm not very good with regex. So what did we call it? Events. So SMB users. We use awk to grab these out, and awk is, I'm going to print from the different columns. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. Now we've got a list of all these. I'm going to go back to the mind map because that kind of gives us an idea of what to try next now that we've got usernames. We'll just name this users.txt. Okay, so we still don't have credentials, but so now we need usernames to kind of move on to the next step. So we got a list. It's rather large if you look at it. We've got 314 users. That's probably not likely the case. So we're going to try to validate these. And one of the tools I like to do user enumeration is Kerberoot. Kerberoot's a pretty cool tool. It'll do various different things for you. So you can try to like straight up brute force the user. You can do a password spray, which is very useful. So it's going to take a list of users and then just do a single password. So you know, common stuff like winter 2022, password 123. But it also can do user enumeration, which is fun. So we're going to do Kerberoot and then user enum, and then let's pull up the help menu so we can see the syntax for that. So we'll enumerate valid usernames from a list by constructing AS requests. So it's authentication service requests to request a TGT from the Kerberos domain controller. So what it's doing is it's, you know, the first step in that authentication to Kerberos is you submit an AS request. You get, if it's successful authentication, you get the AS response. And then in that AS response is your ticket granting ticket. And then you continue on and try to access services, and that's where you get the ticket granting service tickets. So what this tool is doing is looking to find out the response that you get back. So if it's a valid user account, you'll get a kind of like a failed authentication, or it's the username just doesn't exist in the Kerberos database. So let's get this set right. The DC is going to be, should be black or DC01 field.local. Tech D for domain is blackfield.local, and username word list, so users.txt. Make this verbose and then save it to an output file, so we've got that data for later. We'll just do root out. Okay, so now this is running, and see if we can get some valid users back. And Kerberoot's another GitHub tool. And it's actually pre-compiled. So if you wanted to try this out and test it for yourself, you just Google that up, go to your releases, and they're already pre-compiled here, so you can grab those down. Okay, sweet. So we've already got a valid username, which is audit 2020. And it doesn't match that naming convention. So that's probably, we got one. Probably should increase the threads, huh? So my next step after getting some valid users is I'm going to start password spraying, just to see if, get a quick win that way. As soon as we got the valid user accounts, try stuff like this box was released in 2020 around summertime, so we can try like summer 2020, summer 2020 bang, exclamation point, just for the sake of trying. Make sure we're thorough. Let's see, almost done. Well, let's do this. BLACKFIELD. Start keeping notes. Do valid users. Audit 2020. Let's save it here too. See if we had any more. Come back while I was doing that. Okay, 2 more usernames: support and service backup. Okay, so out of 314 usernames, we got 3 valid users. So that's fun. Save this, call this validated. Okay, so back to the mind map. What's the next step? We've got username but no password, so we're gonna try that password spray. Let's see. Open a new tab. So it's saying to perform it with CrackMap exec. And it's great. CrackMap exec is a great tool, but I'd like to continue on with Kerberoot because it can do the same thing. And I feel like it's trying to keep it all in the same tool set. So let's pop that open again and see what it looks like for password spray. So help spray every account with username as a password. It's honestly not a bad idea. Sometimes, people get around password policies in that way just to make it easier on themselves. But I'm gonna try just a single passphrase. So it's password spray, and we do the username wordless, which is validated, and we'll try summer 2020 and do verbose again, and then save this to an output file again as kerberoots spray.out. And we need a DC, C1, and domain. Okay, so we got 2 invalids, but then we also got this response that got ASREP, no pre-auth, but can decrypt bad password. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, ASREP, when you're seeing this no pre-authentication, that is a configuration that a sysadmin or an IT or like a help desk worker has to go in and modify a user account to set to not require pre-authentication. And pre-authentication in Active Directory is, so when you make that initial sign-on attempt and you put in your username and your password itself isn't actually given to Active Directory. So it actually converts the password to an NTLM hash, and then it encrypts a timestamp with that NTLM hash, so that when the domain controller receives that, it decrypts the encrypted data with its known NTLM hash for that user account. And if it gets back valid data, it's saying, okay, yep, this user has the rights to access or to log in. So we're going to give it its ticket granting ticket that has the pack. And the stuff that's stored in that pack is things like group membership, access controls, like this person has this level of privilege, they can do whatever it is in the environment. So when they disable that, when they don't require pre-authentication, you can actually receive the TGT for that user. It's encrypted, and the TGT itself is actually encrypted with the curb TGT users NTLM hash, which we don't know. But there's also a piece of data in there that's encrypted it's encrypted data, but it's signed with the user's NTLM hash. So if you can convert a list of usernames to an NTLM hash and decrypt that data, you can figure out what the password is. So that's an attack that's called ASREP roasting, and that's what we're going to perform here. So we know that it's that single user support, and they do not require pre-authentication. So that's actually a step in the mind map. So let's pop that up and see. So this Python get NP users, that's a in-packet toolkit again. So let's roll with that. To get NP users. If I can see what the syntax is. In-packet is great because it's typically the same format for signing in. So we do blackfield.local and the username that we're trying to perform the request for, which is support. So support. What else do we need? So we're going to do request TGTs for users and output them in JTR, which is John the Ripper, or Hashcat format, which that's what we want. We want the crackable format. And the DCIP, which is 10.10.10.192. No password. And boom. So this what you're seeing here is a recoverable format. So we can save this as a ASREP hash and just throw this here. Support.hash. And it's back to the mind map. This mind map's great. It's made by Orange Cyber Defense, and it kind of keeps you in check and make sure that you're hitting all the steps. So that actually says, okay, cool. So you've got this hash. What hash type do you have? Here's the syntax on how to recover that. So Hashcat can do it. John the Ripper can do it. I think I probably already have a pot file, but we could try it. So attack mode, brute force mode is 18200 for ASREP. And so we're going to do support.hash. And because it's hack the box, we'll do rock you. What's my error here? Oh, okay. So tap force. Okay, sweet. So we'll just do that was support and service backup. Okay. Cool. Crack the hash. And it looks like support user's password is Black Knight of, well, I don't even know what those other characters are for. So Black Knight, we'll just throw this up here so we have a table. Support Black Knight. Okay. So we popped some creds. This is great. Now we have a foothold. So back to the mind map again. Let's see. So now we have one account on the domain. And I'm sorry, I know this is kind of difficult to read, but it's massive. Back to here. Okay, so we got credentials. Kind of like what's the next step is. So now we have a foothold. Now we want to enumerate as much as possible about the environment, so that we have an idea of where we want to take it. So we're the support user account, but I have no idea what kind of access I have. So let's just follow the checklist, enumerate SMB shares. We can do that again. We'll do, let's see. I think I'm going to use another tool. It's not on this list, but it's a tool called Vibe. and Vibe on GitHub. We'll just pop that open. So Vibe is going to do a series of LDAP queries and build a database that we can use locally to do kind of like basic net commands. So if you're on Windows and you did net user whoever and all that data comes back, this tool is actually built to enable you to do that on a extracted database. So you don't have to have remote access to that host. You can find like things such as group membership, kind of some privileges up there. You can look at the password policy. You can even perform some file share enumeration. So I've already got that set up, and that's in Opt Vibe. Oh, activate. So let's go to Vibe. And look at the help. So we need credentials, domain, user. Let's get the better, more verbose. So Vibe is going to try to connect to LDAP-S, so it's going to be on 636. So you have to specify, because if you go back to the ports that were open, we'll only have clear text LDAP. So we'll need to specify that, and then we'll do unencrypted because LDAP-S is not available. So throwing in all the creds that we have, which was support, and the password for that user, which was and then tech D for domain, BLACKFIELD, guy. Again, specifying we're going to use 389 and unencrypted. I think it's because I already have the database. Let's remove it. Okay, so on first use, this is what it would look like. So it's building up your local database. So it's looking for users, groups, computers, password policies, and then for the existence of SPN, so service principal names on those users. So we can pull up help. So and make this bigger so it's a little easier to read. Okay, so clear is going to clear the screen, help, display help, list. So let's list all users. So it pulls it down. Looks like a bunch of stale accounts that are here. But starting off, we have administrator, the guest, Curb TGT, audit 2020, which we knew about support. These are likely just stale accounts of some kind. We're just in there to fill up everything so that we had to, and then service backup, and then another username that we didn't have before. So we can add that to our user list. Okay, so we are support. So if we net user support, we can look at data about that account. Okay, so nothing too interesting, not seeing a profile path, password last set, cool, last logged on. So we actually created that logon by authenticating and querying. So we have the other accounts. So if we net user audit 2020, okay, kind of similar, same thing. So let's net user, and then it was SVC backup. So this one, we get some more info. They have different group memberships. You see the other two accounts, they have none. So copied and paste, sorry. Pull that back up, clean that up, net user, SVC. Okay, so they are a group membership in remote management users. And previously when I was talking about it, so that port's open. So PowerShell remoting, when they have that group membership, that means that they can use that service. So that's useful to know. And then they also have another membership in backup operators. So backup operators, if you have that group membership, you can actually access the file system of the domain controller. So for example, like if you connected over SMB, you'd be able to access the root file system. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to privilege escalate with that, but it does give you access and you'd be able to do some enumeration. So that's all very good to know. I'm going to make a note of that here. So backup operators and remote management users. Okay, so it didn't really make any progress for us. So the other thing I wanted to do was share hunter. So scans the targets, enumerating the shares on the target and the level of access for the specified user using all of these flags. So let's run the share hunter and see what we can get out of it. Tech D for BLACKFIELD, use support. When I first started using this tool, it's always a habit for me to have it in single quotes for the passwords, especially when they contain, characters that could cause issues. But when you're in the command line for this, you don't need to enclose it in quotes. So domain user password. I think that should be it. So we need the target tech D. Scanning. Okay, so nothing new. So this account doesn't have any extra access, so we still have that forensic box there. So let's go back to the mind map. Let's see what's next. Videos over the command line. Okay, so let me see what it looks like on the screen. Oh, I see. So I had it too far to the left. I'll pop that open. I'll do it again just so you can kind of see what I was doing. So what I was looking at before was I was running that share hunter and just the necessary flags to actually run it. So you need the domain, the user accounts credentials, and then the target, which is just the IP address of the domain controller. And it's just looking to see what the account that I'm authenticating with, if they have extra privilege, extra permissions to read more file shares, but this account doesn't. So it's still just set profiles, no access to forensic, no access to the others. Okay, so now back to the mind map, like I was saying. Got one account on the domain. So Bloodhound, this box taught me about Bloodhound, and it kind of blew my mind that this was possible. I knew about Sharphound and be able to run that binary locally on the host, but I didn't know about being able to do all those queries remotely. So Bloodhound Python is it by Fox IT, I think? Yeah. So it's just it's a data ingester basically. So what Bloodhound does is it will query all this data, it'll store it all up into parsable JSON files, and then it loads all of that data into a Neo4j database, and then the Bloodhound GUI will actually give you kind of it'll find all the different entries for access controls and access and permissions in Active Directory and let you map that out. So it uses that graph theory to say, hey, I have this user account. What are my permissions in AD? And you don't need to have remote access to do it. So let's exit. So let's build that out. Let's get back to source opt Bloodhound. And we'll run that up. So let's see. So we have valid credentials. We'll do. So there's various different collection methods that you can do, and there's a lot of them. Some of the more useful ones, in my experience, have been local admin session, see who's logged in. Trusts are useful, but that's more of a kind of further down the line. But definitely ACLs. That's a good one too. So let's see. Let's get this built out and start running. So tech U support, tech P is credentials for this user. Domain is blackfield.local. And we'll do the name server is 10.10.10.192. We'll do collection method all. But do a zip file, we'll call it, that should be enough. Cool. So this is running, so I found one domain, found 18 different computers, 315 users. That all sounds about right. 51 groups. And what it'll do is it'll store all this data into a zip file, and then when we open up Bloodhound, it'll it'll load up all that data and then actually present in a format that we can read. So we'll start up Neo4j, and then I think Neo4j, if you do like an apt install bloodhound, all of this stuff will get built out automatically. So Neo4j is you just loading up the backend database and starting that up so that it has something to ingest all the data to. And you'll see it's enabled on localhost here. The first time you run this, the default credentials are Neo4j, and then you'll have to set your own password. So connected, we're all good, and let's just do horizontal run bloodhound. Okay, so I already have data in here, so I'm going to clear it out so you can see what that looks like. Clear this up. And there's a dark mode. For those of you that don't know, settings dark mode, it's really nice. Otherwise, you get blinded. So to ingest the data, you're just going to hit this upload data button, throw that up there, and open, and then you'll start seeing the progress of everything getting loaded. So we've got domains, users, computers, and groups. Okay, we're all done with loading. So now you can search for a node. So if, like for example, we have the support user. So if we search for support and click on that actual node, you'll get some information about the account. So you'll have the SID, details about password. If there was a description, so say for example, I don't know, IT admin threw information about the account to explain what it's for or even its password, you'd see that in the description box. You also see ASRep roastable, which is how we got access to it, kind of shows up there. So when you have these nodes, you can say, and you want to build these paths, you can set it either as a starting node, you can say, hey, I own this guy. Like this is me. I have that access now. So let's look at the other accounts. Do audit 2020. Kind of the same deal. And a lot of this stuff is going to look, it's more information, but it's the same data that you would have got from Vibe. Just group memberships and things of that nature. So if you look at audit 2020, it's just a member of domain users. But if we were to go to SVC backup, look at the group membership changes there. Okay, so now it maps this out. So you have these things called edges. Okay, so when you're looking at the edge, if there was something that was, if you right click that edge, you can find more information of how it goes and the way that it flows. So when you see the edge kind of like it's this wider size and then it squeezes down, that means that he's a member of that group. It's that directional. So if you were to look at it and pull that open, user SVC backup is a member of the group, domain users, groups and Active Directory grant their members any privileges the group itself has. So there's no real abuse, OPSEC, nothing, but this is very useful. This edge will give you information. So when, say, for example, we're looking at something that was exploitable, it would give you abuse syntax and kind of like, this is how it works. And then it'll actually give you references to blog posts or even like Microsoft documentation on what a specific permission in Active Directory is. So very useful, very helpful. It's kind of a go tool, bread and butter tool for pen testing, especially in Active Directory. Well, of course, in Active Directory. So let's go back to support because that's the user that we have access to. So let's look at some queries. So if we find, see what comes back. If we say, so it actually has a query for the ASRep roast. So if you manage to get a foothold without roasting, and you just, I'd say you password sprayed successfully, and you did the same thing. So you could try to do a pivot and see if there's Kerber or ASRep roastable or Kerber roastable accounts, which is similar, and try to crack their hashes and then kind of pivot and move laterally. So we can run that, see if there's any Kerber roastable users. No data returns, so no accounts have an SPN set that we would be able to take advantage of. So let's do shortest path from own principles, and with support, nothing. Okay. So let's take a look at first degree. So it gets more interesting too. So when you look at the group memberships, that's kind of useful. Like, okay, if you have an account and he's a member of help desk, you probably has some privileges. So, but since that's not the case, we can look at like different permissions that have been set to the account. So when you see outbound control, that means this account has permissions over some object in AD. And when you see first degree object control, that's a straight up set. So let's change it to where it looks like this. So support at blackfield.local has the force change password over audit 2020. So let's look at that edge and abuse info. So there are at least two ways to execute this attack. The first and most obvious is by using the built-in net. So we can, if we had access to the host, we could just net user audit 2020 and then set their new password. But we don't have remote access yet, so we could try. Also, I want to pull this up too because Orange Cyber Defense has another mind map, which is incredibly useful. Going back to my mind map. So when you find these ACLs and you're not really sure of them, so we have, it kind of goes from the more global permission to kind of squeeze down, like this is exactly what it is. So if you have generic all, you have all of these. If you have all extended rights, you have all of these. If you have right property, so it kind of squeezes it down. So we can look at force change password, and that's what we have over here. Is this user has force change password, and it gives you ideas of how you could do that. So set domain user password is power view, but then you have net RPC password. So keep that in mind. It's a way to perform it, but we try to do a remote password change first, which was here, and we'll go back to this tab. So crackmap exec actually has remote command execution if it's available to that user. So we'll do 10.10.10 192 use support.p back to Notion, grab that credential. And you can find that with just bring up the help. So attack X will do command line, capital X will do a PowerShell command. So we'll just try lowercase x and do who am I. Okay, so no data came back. Let's see if we can try PowerShell. So nothing's coming back. So more than likely, this user just doesn't have permissions to authenticate to that box and to log on locally. So we're going to need to figure out another way to change the password remotely. And when this box was live, this was the hardest part for me. So let's do change. I'm going to Google change Active Directory password from Linux. Let's do remotely from Linux. What's that? And I still have a hard time finding that blog. So it's, when it happened, it was actually Mubix who had written a blog post, and I will find his blog real fast. And I think it was from like 2017. So finding the actual resource for it was pretty hard. DerbyCon, right here, yeah. So reset 80 user password with Linux. It kind of, so the blog itself's not extremely long, but it does explain exactly kind of how we're going to be able to do this. There've been plenty of times. If you have Sama client tools, SME client install, you can use RPC client out of the gate. You can auth with password or Kerberos. This is especially useful in situations where you have dropped into a user that has an active Kerberos token, or you can make one. So we can connect over the RPC port, which we found was open, and there's actually a way to remotely change the password for that account using that protocol. This is what I had done originally, but since then I've learned about the net command. So new distributions of Kali, like the most recent ones, actually have it built in already. So you can run net commands on that remote host, and it's it's a little simpler than using the RPC client, but we could try both. So let's do RPC client first, and helps to have 2 Cs. We'll do, so we need just the username, which is support, and IP address of the host. Okay, back to his account. So he uses set user info 2. Let's see what that does. So we'll need the username, level, and then the password. So let's see. So we have that permission over audit 2020. So we'll do set user info 2, audit 2020, 23. We'll just do password. Password. It's not very verbose on the output, is it? So split this horizontally, and we'll do crack map exec to validate whether or not that account's password actually changed. So we'll do audit 2020 password. Yep. So we were able to change the password with the RPC client change. So the other one is to use net commands, which is kind of useful. I like doing it this way. So we'll do net RPC password for audit 2020. And then our username, which is support. So now we can change it again. So we'll just do password 1. We need the password for support. Also not very verbose, but now if I do password 1, now the password's changed. So you have 2 different methods there, which is cool. But with the mind map, it actually tells you to use that net command. So depends on what your resources are, what your checklists are. So now we pivoted. So we have access to a whole nother account, and it becomes kind of this vicious cycle. So now we have credentials, go from the top of the list back down and see what we can do with this user. Remember, we still have Vibe. So go back into that. But we've kind of already poked around at what this user could do. So pull it back open and see if maybe, remember we had those file shares, see if there's something else that account has access to. So we'll pop over to Vibe. Why are you doing this? Oh, capitalization. Okay. So try not to cover it up again this time. So again, help, and then we're going to use that share hunter as this new account. Tag you. Did I exit it? No. Audit 2020, tag P. Don't need the quotes. Password 1. BLACKFIELD, local, and whoa. Okay. So Audit 2020 has read access over forensic, which the other accounts didn't have. So let's get access to that file share. SMB client.py. So this is, I think I used the actual built-in SMB client. So this is in packets of SMB client. The syntax to sign in with that one is similar to all the other in packet tools. So it's gonna be the domain user password at that address. So we can actually close out of this for now. BLACKFIELD.local. We are now audit 2020. Our password is password 1. And we're going to 10.10.10.192. Okay, so if we do that, shares. Now we can access forensic, so we use forensic. please. Okay. So let's see, we've got commands, output, memory analysis, and tools. Let's see what tools we have. Sleuthkit, sysinternals, and volatility. So if you're not familiar with any of these, volatility is kind of like a framework for accessing and parsing memory dumps. So for this to be here, given the account's name forensic, or given the share name forensic, given the username's actual account name is audit 2020, and then seeing memory based tools, it seems like they might have been doing something post compromise. So let's go back a couple directories and see what's in commands output. So they likely were keeping track of everything that they were running just for auditing purposes. Kept a list of admins groups. So let's cat the domain admins.txt and the group members. So I pwned your company. Yep. So they got hacked at some point, and then they probably hired a third party to come in, do some forensics, and find out how they got in so that they can clean it up and fix it. So that's interesting. We can probably look at domain users and see if anything's changed there. Domain users, I pwned your company. That's the domain admin. I can't say that name. I will butcher that, but I'm fairly certain that that's the box creator just kind of leaving in an audit 2020. So no different really, no different users except for I pwned your company. So okay, not a big deal. Firewall rules might be useful if we try to access and we're not able to get there, but the likely have changed since then. So let's back up a directory and look at, oh, there's no L. Memory analysis. So probably what they did is took a lot of images of different processes. So they probably looked at all the things that were running, task lists, things of that nature. So, but looking through this list, if you're not familiar, one of the most useful ones are valuable to us as pen testers is LSAS. It's people make a living off of getting around endpoint detections from preventing you from accessing this. So if they've just got a zip file sitting there waiting for us, let's just grab that. And we can pull, there's a lot of good information from the LSAS file. You're going to find, depending on how their patch management is, you will get probably some NTLM hashes, maybe some DCC2 hashes. And if we're lucky, clear text. So if they haven't properly patched their host, we might get clear text credentials out of that. So pull that file down. You can parse it locally, which is cool with, and this is something I learned from the box too, is with PyPyCats, which is just like the Python implementation of Mimikatz. Basically, this box told me that if there's a tool that exists, there's probably a Python version of it somewhere. Okay, so let's X out of this. LSAS, let's move it into BLACKFIELD. CD BLACKFIELD and unzip it. File lsas.dmp and see what that is. So it's a mini dump, crash report, 16 streams. So it is exactly what we think it is. It's a dump of the LSAS process, and it's in mini dump format. So because of that, we can use PyPyCats to parse that, and it would just be like if we were on the box as admin running the LSAS dump. So let's parse this thing and see what's available. PyPyCats tag H, see what we need to run. So get secrets from memory dump. So that's a positional. We'll do LSA. And what other positional? So we need the path to, it is a mini dump file. So we'll need to say mini dump and then the path to it. lss.tmp, and we'll throw an out file, lss.out. And let's open it up in here. Okay, so it successfully parsed it, and just immediately right away, the first thing that we see is a user account that we didn't have yet, and they're in NT hash. So we can check and see if that's still valid. Grab the NT hash for the account, throw it in the credentials. So SVC backup and throw the hash in there. Let's make this bigger and scroll through. So like I was saying about clear text is we actually have the clear text password for the domain controller itself. So that's interesting to look at on how Active Directory's passwords are. I'm not going to try it. I did try it previously. The password actually doesn't work. But we do have administrator. That'd be nice. We could try this and see if it works for us. Administrator. And since we have the NT hashes, we can actually pass a hash with a ton of different tools to see if we have access to it. So let's do grep username lss.out. Username administrator DWM. So looks like administrator, the machine account itself, and then SVC backup are the only usernames in here. So let's try and see if we got DA with the administrator's hash. Because that'd be nice, wouldn't it? No. So remember, this is from their post-compromise kind of audit. So more than likely they've changed this password to to fix the however they got owned before. But we have this service backup account. Let's see if we can pass a hash with this user. Sweet, we're in. So we got service backup. So now we pivoted for what is this? The third time. So pop this in here, and that's valid. We can get rid of administrator because they definitely changed that one. And got a couple of things we could do. We've already kind of made some notes about this account. Remote management users and backup operators. And we've also got Bloodhound. So we could go into and say, audit 2020, mark that user as owned. We can go into SVC, mark him as owned. And then before we try to get access to it, so let's see if we can shortest path from owned, SVC backup. So we can PowerShell remote. And there's various different ways to do that. My personal favorite is with EvilWinRM. And that's a Ruby-based PowerShell remoting tool that has a lot of extra tooling built into it. So you can actually pass a hash with it as well. And on real world stuff, I think sysadmins forget that when you stand up a server of any kind, that port is automatically open, and they don't necessarily think to close it. So if you gain privileged credentials, whether that's the clear text or the hash, you can usually pass the hash and get remote access to that host when they try to disable all the other ones. It's just one of those. It's just an oversight kind of thing. Bueller, come on. It's still up. Try this again. I'm sitting there talking and being all nice to EvilWinRM, and it doesn't want to connect. Oh my God, I did it wrong. Is that port closed? Someone trolling. Filtered. Okay. That's funny. So that's interesting. Why is the port closed all of a sudden? Let's see. 5985 open. See if we can do WZ. I don't know if this is going to let us get access, but we can try. Hashes. Yeah. So why is it filtered all of a sudden? That's the interesting thing. Sav, I may need to reset this box. That port's supposed to be open.
Yeah, no, I can reset it real quick. 1 second. All right, it's resetting now, so just take like a minute.
Yeah, no worries. That's fun.
Yep.
Okay, so this should have worked. So as soon as the box resets, we'll get remote access.
That's good. I'm looking at it now, waiting to see whenever it maybe load the page.
This would be what a great time for Hack the Box to just spontaneously go down.
It should be back up now.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. It's still loading availability.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, should we take a 5-minute break to wait for this to become available?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. Let's step away for a sec.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking for my 5-minute break. Can't see. I don't have a 5-minute break thing, so we're just gonna look at a connection image for 5 minutes. See, I want to see if it's back up yet. Can you see if you can ping it?
Hey, it's good. I got the shell. I think my VPN might have been crapping out, something like that. But it's weird. Either way, I'm good. If everybody else is good, I'll keep going.
All right, let me add.
Okay, so now after technical difficulties, so Evil Winterms popped the, I don't want to say pop the shell, but we've got access to the endpoint as the SVC backup. So let's see if we got user. Okay, so we've got low privilege on it. Okay, let's pop back open the mind map. We've got access to that account. So now the last pivot, the only thing left for us to do is to get DA. So we've taken over the 3 available accounts, and now we need a privilege escalate. So excuse me, let's see kind of who we are and what we are with who am I /priv, and we already know we're a member of that backup operators account. So we have that SC backup privilege enabled, which is great. So we'll actually be able to take advantage of that and use it. So one other thing I wanted to show you is that with the backup operators group, you can actually, I can kill this ping, split this vertically. So packet bin. What I was saying before about being able to access the file system as that backup operator. So even if WinRM was disabled, we wouldn't be able to necessarily execute commands, but we'd be able to navigate it. So do SMB client pi and then svc backup and hashes for that account. Oops, I need to add IP. BLACKFIELD.local. Why you do this? You need a line separator. Yep. There, okay, weird. So kind of what we were doing before, if we tried to use C, now we can access file system, and it's just because that backup operator privilege. But what's cool is like if you go to notes, that's not normally there on the C drive. So let's do cat notes. Mates after the domain compromising computer forensics. So we were right, they got owned at some point, change every password. And then change the curb TGT password twice. So that's to get around, say someone generated a golden ticket and then in the domain, you need to reset the curb TGT's account password twice to kind of remove them being able to use that golden ticket. Disable the auditor's account. We know that's not the case. So we took advantage of that and then use nominative domain admin accounts instead of this one. So nominative domain admin accounts just means like named domain accounts. So it's likely that when they were doing this, that everyone was sharing the administrator account. So what they're saying here is everyone should have their own. So if it was me, it'd be like Garrett_admin or something similar to that, which is good advice, but then also bad advice at the same time, because now you know exactly what that account's for. So it's not terrible, but I don't know that I personally like that idea. Because the audit report is sensitive, I've encrypted on the desktop at root.txt. Cool, so that's what we're after. We don't need this anymore. I just wanted to show you guys that you're able to access that even if you can't get a shell like this. So the backup privilege, that's abusable. And one of the cooler resources that I like with AD is it's like Buftas. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but he changed his name. Okay, but there's an actual a huge cheat sheet for this. I'm gonna throw it in Discord because this is one of my go-tos. So it gives you information about using Bloodhound, PowerView, the AD modules, but then it's like syntax for different tools for various different attacks, like what we did with the ASRep roast, force setting SPNs, which is a cool attack. But we're actually a member of backup operators, so let's just search for backup, and then we can abuse the backup operators group. What is this? If we manage to compromise the user account that is a member of the backup operators group, we can then abuse its SE backup privilege, which we see is here and enabled. To create a shadow copy of the current state of the DC, extract the ntds.dit database file, dump the hashes, and escalate our privileges to DA. Sounds good. Once we have access on the account that has the SE backup privilege, we can access the DC and create a shadow copy using the signed binary disk shadow. So it gives you this information, create a text file that will contain the shadow copy process script. So here's the script. It starts here, set context, persistent no writer. So this is all just information for disk shadow to process. So it's going to go kind of a line feed and say, okay, cool, this is the steps for me to take. So let's just copy this. We'll create a text file here. We'll just call it, they call it script.txt. And we need to kill that line. So Evil Winter M has file upload capability. So that's another just selling point for it, is that if you set like a local path for where it's at, you could do the scripts path. So if you had PowerView and with PowerShell remoting, you can actually load all the PowerView modules in memory on that the WinRM process itself. So once you get loaded, it's actually loaded into that process. So, and it works, not often, but it is a way, it is a kind of a function in the tool, but it can also do in-memory execution of C# binaries, which is great. So let's load this up so we can upload the script file. Scripts. And just follow the next step. So execute disk shadow with our script as a parameter. So since we're in PowerShell, I'll do command.exe. Okay, so this is what disk shadow looks like when you actually run it. So it's following the script that we created here. What we're looking for is the shadow copy was successfully exposed as W. Okay, so it's on the W drive. So next, we need to access the shadow copy. We may have the SE backup privilege, but we can't just simply copy paste ntds.dit. We need to mimic a backup software and then use various API calls to copy it on the accessible folder. For this, we're going to use this amazing repo. So this is, it's going to give you 2 different DLLs. It's going to let you take advantage of that privilege and kind of impersonate that software like they were describing. So we'll need, when you go to that repo, you'll need the privilege utils and commandlets. So we'll just copy both of these into BLACKFIELD and save this one. Cool. So for this, we're going to use this. So we need to import the modules. So let's get them uploaded. Backup privilege commandlets. And then we'll do utils. And we need to import them both. Okay. We'll skip the checks because it is enabled. Use the functionality of the DLLs to copy the ntds.dit database file from the shadow copy to a location of your choice. So we'll save it from here. It just says the path to save and then overwrite. So we'll just take this, the copy file, SE, and we want it, we'll just put it in this service backup documents, ntds.dit. Users. So now it should be, now we've got the NTDS. Awesome. And the last step is dump the system hive. So we will do, save this. And the reason this is needed is to, actually, I don't know. I'm not going to try to pretend like I know. I just know I need it. Okay, so now we need to extract both the, why don't I see system? Because I didn't save it in documents. That's fine. Let's grab the NTDS and then I'll grab the system hive. This might take a little bit. Now I want to know why you need the hive. Oh boy, that's going to take a while. So I'm just trying to speed things up a little bit and using WinRM to download NTDS, and then I'm using SMB client to download the system hive because it does take a while, and I know I'm already dragging along, so I'm downloading both those. Okay, SMB client was way faster. Let's see. will win the race. SMB client wins. Okay. So we have the NTDS and the system hive. Let's move those into BLACKFIELD. And so with both those files, we can actually parse it with locally with secret sump, which is another in-packet tool. So if you run secret sump apply and then throw that tac H for help, you can see that it will actually do remote services, or you can do local if you want to parse local files, which is what we're going to do. So the necessary flags are NTDS and the system. Excuse me. So let's try. So you just specify local NTDS, and then the file itself we need to be local NTDS is NTDS.dit, and then system.hive, and that should be it. Okay. So remember we backed up the NTDS file, the current one for the domain controller because of that backup operator's privilege. So now you can see kind of what we've got going on. Got NTLM hashes for all the various workstations on the domain, but we want the grand prize, which is administrator. So we can steal the NTLM hash for him or them, excuse me, and we'll do administrator. Now let's see if we win. Validate the user is CME, administrator, and hopefully we see pwned. All right, administrator. So now we can go back to evil NRM. I need to administrator H and open up root.txt. Okay, desktop. And that's it. And that's the box. Man, it is, let's see, 1:30 Eastern. So I had two other unintended paths. So when this box came out, Print Nightmare wasn't a thing, but there's also a super quick one that XCT, who's, I think he's like omniscient on Hack the Box, actually took advantage of another privilege that this account has, or the backup operators. What was his name? Oh, SVC backup. So real quick, I will do that one. To kind of show, because it is much simpler. Attack I, 10, 10, 10, 192, attack U. So let's see, XCT. I'm not sure which box he was doing. He was doing something on Proving Grounds, and he wrote a kind of proof of concept for the SE restore privilege. And so if you look at your privileges, you actually have that enabled, the SE restore privilege. So if you look at the source code for it, what it's doing is it's kind of getting a handle on that process. So when you make the syscall or the API call to the SE restore privilege, it uses that handle to execute the next command that you pass to it with that privilege, and it's much simpler than the backup abuse. So let's go back to the unintendeds. And so once you compile it, it's just a basic binary SE restore abuse. So if you get access to it, you can run se restore abuse, and then you see that the usage is just run the binary and then kind of enclose the command in quotes. So we'll do exe restore abuse exe, and then we'll say command, and just add service backup to net local group administrators svc backup / add. Okay, so now if we do a net local group administrators, oh, did it fail on me when I'm trying to do it live? Oh, I failed when I'm trying to do it live. I love it. se restore. See, let's try this again. Command. Administrators svc backup / add. Let's see what I did here. There, now it worked that time. So you can see it added the SVC backup account to administrators local group, which is a group on a domain controller. So to take advantage of that permission, we could just reestablish the session. And so now that the SVC backup, which used to be a lower privilege account, can go to administrators desktop. Did I misspell again? Yes. And then read the group.txt. Cool. So that's the newer, I think you actually pushed this out. Yeah, it's just 3 months ago, which is pretty cool and a whole lot easier than the whole NTDS, and you don't compromise the entire domain that way. So you kind of just do a quick privilege escalation. So yeah, that's the box.
Thank you so much for walking through that. That was like, I remember whenever it first came out, like going through it, there was like another walkthrough or something on YouTube, but that's like one of my favorite boxes for AD, like that one of Forest.
Yeah, Forest is great too.
So yeah, we really appreciate you coming on today. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ping us in the Discord. We could definitely help with any questions you have. And we're looking forward to the next meetup. We'll make sure that's released in the next few coming weeks. If there's anything else you want to add, Garrett, I was gonna say if that mind map that you have, if you want to share that in the Discord. I saw it was like an S3 link.
Yeah, it's just on my Notion. Hang on, it's Orange Cyber Defense mind map. So it's actually for Arsenal, but if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, it's got their various stuff. They've got a bunch of different ones.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I'll pop that here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett.
Yeah,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're gonna end it here. So like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and we're gonna end the broadcast now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.